Imagine a single refinery so massive it can process 650,000 barrels of crude oil every single day, more than the entire daily consumption of some European countries. This isn't in Europe or the Middle East. It's in Nigeria. The Dangote Refinery, the largest in Africa and one of the biggest in the world, has begun ramping up production. And already, the shockwaves are being felt thousands of miles away. European refineries, once the backbone of fuel supply to West Africa, are now struggling to find buyers. Profits are shrinking, storage tanks are filling up, and some plants are shutting down. Today, we'll dive into how one African megaproject is rewriting the rules of global fuel trade and why Europe is worried. Stay tuned. Located on the outskirts of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, the Dangote Refinery is nothing short of an industrial giant. With a capacity to process 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day, it is not only the largest refinery in Africa but also among the biggest worldwide. To put that into perspective, it's capable of refining more than the total daily oil consumption of several European nations combined. Construction of the refinery took years of planning and billions of dollars in investment, but it wasn't until September 2024 that operations truly began to ramp up. Since then, output has climbed rapidly, with the facility processing close to full capacity within its first year of serious operation. This quick acceleration is a clear sign of its ambition to meet Africa's massive fuel demand head-on. But what exactly does the Dangote Refinery produce? Its design allows it to churn out a wide range of petroleum products: gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, kerosene, and even polypropylene for industrial use. Unlike many older plants, it is also highly flexible, capable of adjusting production depending on market demand. That flexibility gives it a competitive edge over traditional European refineries, many of which were built decades ago and lack the same adaptability. Why was such a colossal project necessary in the first place? Despite being Africa's top crude oil producer, Nigeria has long been paradoxically dependent on fuel imports. Decaying local refineries and decades of underinvestment left the country importing billions of dollars worth of gasoline and diesel every year, mainly from Europe. The Dangote Refinery was envisioned as the game changer, a project that would slash import dependency, ensure domestic fuel security, create jobs, and even open the door for Nigeria to become a net exporter of refined products. In short, the Dangote Refinery isn't just a plant, it's a bold economic strategy designed to reshape Africa's energy future. For decades, Europe has been the fuel station of West Africa. From the ports of Rotterdam to the refineries in Italy and the UK, millions of barrels of gasoline flowed steadily across the Atlantic to meet Africa's booming demand. But in the past year, that long-standing trade route has begun to unravel fast. Between January and July 2025, European gasoline exports to West Africa averaged just 285,000 barrels per day. That's a staggering one-third lower than the same period last year. What changed? The answer lies in Nigeria, where the Dangote Refinery has been scaling up at an unprecedented pace. By July 2025, the refinery was already processing about 595,000 barrels of crude per day, edging closer to its full design capacity of 650,000. That sudden ramp-up meant West Africa needed far less gasoline from Europe. The impact is already reshaping trade flows. Not long ago, 1 in every 5 barrels of gasoline produced by European refiners was shipped to Nigeria. Today, it's closer to 1 in 10. That's not just a small dip, it's a seismic shift in where Europe can sell its fuel. And when you take away such a massive customer almost overnight, the ripple effects spread quickly. Across Europe, gasoline is piling up. Storage tanks in Rotterdam, Europe's fuel hub, have seen a noticeable 9% increase in gasoline stocks compared to last year. But more supply with less demand comes with a price: shrinking profit margins. Refineries that rely heavily on gasoline output are feeling the squeeze the hardest, with some even operating at a loss. This isn't just about numbers, it's about survival. Europe's refining system was built on a steady flow of exports to markets like West Africa. Now, with Dangote supplying much of the region's demand locally, Europe is left with too much product and too few buyers. The trade winds have shifted, and they're blowing firmly in Africa's direction. Not all European refineries are created equal. Some facilities are highly sophisticated, able to tweak their production mix depending on market shifts. But many of the continent's plants were built decades ago, with limited flexibility. These older, less complex refineries are locked into producing large volumes of gasoline, even when demand for it collapses. That rigidity now puts them directly in the firing line of the Dangote effect. A recent casualty underscores this reality. The Lindsey Refinery in the UK, owned by Prax, was forced to shut down in July 2025 after attempts to sell it failed. Once a major supplier to West Africa, Lindsey's dependence on gasoline exports left it vulnerable. With Nigerian demand evaporating, its business model no longer made sense. Analysts warn that Lindsey is unlikely to be the last. Some operators are scrambling to adapt. Take Valero, for instance. Rather than accept shrinking margins, the company is reportedly redirecting operations, adjusting yields, and shifting toward markets where demand is more resilient. But such moves require significant investment and aren't possible for everyone, especially smaller or financially weaker companies. The numbers paint a sobering picture. Experts estimate that unless Europe retires or repurposes about 600,000 barrels per day of refining capacity, the region risks being flooded with surplus gasoline. Too much supply will only drive profits down further, accelerating closures across the industry. This moment is a stress test for Europe's refining sector. Plants that can modernize and diversify their output may survive, but those stuck in the past face an uphill battle. Dangote's rise has not just reduced exports. It has exposed structural weaknesses that were already lurking in Europe's refining landscape. The question now isn't whether more closures will happen, it's how many and how soon. What makes the Dangote Refinery such a formidable player isn't just its size, it's the strategic advantages built into its design and operations. One of the most powerful strengths is flexibility. Unlike many older refineries in Europe that are locked into gasoline-heavy production, Dangote can shift output between gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, and even petrochemicals depending on market needs. That adaptability means it can ride out fluctuations in global demand far more effectively than its rivals. Another advantage lies in policy alignment. Nigeria's government has thrown its weight behind the refinery as part of a broader push to end decades of fuel import dependence. By prioritizing local refining, the country shields itself from global supply shocks while boosting domestic availability. This backing provides Dangote with a favorable environment, from regulatory support to guaranteed demand within the local market. Scale also plays a critical role. With a nameplate capacity of 650,000 barrels per day, the refinery benefits from economies of scale that reduce per barrel costs. Beyond sheer volume, its advanced configuration allows it to process a wide variety of crude grades, from light sweet to heavier blends, giving it access to cheaper feedstock options and reducing exposure to price swings in any single crude market. Then there's geography. Located in Nigeria, Dangote sits right next to one of the fastest-growing fuel markets in the world. For West African nations, sourcing products from Lagos is cheaper and faster than importing from Europe. The shorter shipping distances cut costs, minimize delays, and reduce exposure to volatile freight rates. In a competitive market, that logistical edge is huge. Put together, these advantages explain why Dangote isn't just another refinery, it's a regional powerhouse capable of undercutting Europe's position in Africa. Flexibility, policy support, scale, and location give it a playbook that European refineries simply can't match. The story of the Dangote Refinery is far bigger than a tug-of-war between Nigeria and Europe. Its rise is already reshaping the global fuel trade. When a refinery of this size redirects demand in one region, ripple effects spread worldwide. Tanker routes are being redrawn, with fewer voyages from Europe to Africa and more short-haul trips within West Africa. This has consequences for the shipping industry, where companies that once relied on transatlantic fuel traffic must now rethink their business models. Industries dependent on stable fuel supplies, aviation, logistics, even manufacturing, are also watching closely. A steady local supply in West Africa could mean lower costs and fewer disruptions, but in Europe, oversupply could trigger layoffs and financial strain. There's also a climate angle to this shift. If Europe's least efficient refineries are forced to shut down, that could accelerate the continent's transition toward lower emissions. At the same time, increased refining capacity in Africa raises questions about whether the world is doubling down on fossil fuels just as the global push for clean energy intensifies. In other words, one region's win could complicate another region's climate ambitions. Looking ahead, analysts estimate Dangote could reach full capacity within the next year. That milestone will be a tipping point. Europe will lose even more market share, and the pressure on vulnerable plants will intensify. Over the next 6 to 12 months, key signs to watch include refinery closures in Europe, product diversification strategies by survivors, and how quickly Dangote expands its export footprint beyond West Africa. At its heart, the tension is simple. Dangote is rising, Europe is losing ground, and refineries across the continent must either adapt or die. What began as Nigeria's solution to its own fuel dependency has grown into a transformation of energy flows that touches shipping lanes, profit margins, and even climate strategies. The balance of power in global refining is shifting south, and the world is only beginning to see the consequences. Now I want to hear from you. Which European refineries do you think can survive this massive shift? And what impact do you think this will have on fuel prices in both Africa and Europe? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you believe the rise of Dangote marks a true turning point in global energy trade, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insights.